Hey everybody from Beantown to Yorktown. This is the Beatdown. My name is Matthew Burris, and alongside with me here is my producer and friend
Gabe Shames coming at you from Beantown.
That's right. And on this podcast, our first podcast here on YouTube, we talk about the world of combat sports, boxing, kickboxing, and mixed martial arts.
Awesome.
Exactly, and my background, I did a little volunteer work at Redline Gym, took a little mixed martial arts class myself, and but I've always been a fan of fighting. I was a boxing fan for a long time, got into martial arts with the Bruce Lee films, and longtime pro wrestling fan before I got into mixed martial arts.
All right, and I'm sort of coming at you as an outsider here. Don't know much about the sports world or the fight world, but I did in school take fencing and kickboxing. It was a non-contact kickboxing class, but I actually was the one person who ended up getting punched in the nose, and that was a great time. And then, of course, like a lot of kids out there, I took karate. So that's my experience, and I'm here to learn more from Matthew's inside knowledge.
Yeah, and right now we're actually drinking some Bud Light Cranberita, and right now it's good taste. It's a winter edition. Wish it was. It could be here all the time, just like the apple Ritas. You know, I wish that could be around for a long time, but those are the breaks.
Those are the breaks. And cheers
Cheers.
As we drink this.
Yep. All right.
So we do get a little bit tipsy here, Matt wanted you to know.
Yeah, we will get a little tipsy, but that's the thing, because on my my old YouTube show with Kevin Offer, Maddie and the dog, we used to drink and talk about sports. So no different here. You know, just regular guys. You know, talking about sports and drinking.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Everyday Guys show. And let's get into results from last night's Glory Kickboxing 18. It happened live at the Grand Casino in Oklahoma. And that is the home state of Jim Ross, former broadcaster at WWE. And as he would say, it was definitely a slobber knocker. Sal Cavallari is the tournament winner. He won the light heavyweight tournament, and now he's the #1 contender for the light heavyweight championship. Definitely can't wait for that fight. Also, Jason Tyson Wilness defeated Wayne Barrett in a middleweight showdown. Of course, Jason his nickname is Tyson because of his admiration for Mike Tyson, and he's got some knockout power coming from that Dutch style kickboxing. Definitely a great fight. Went to a unanimous decision. Definitely a great fight. And also another one of the main events, the rematch between Robin van Roostelman and David Kira. Robin, of course, beat him once again and is now the new Glory lightweight champion. David, Kira, and Robin van Roostelman, they fought 3 times already now. They fought once before Glory, and Robin won. Twice at a Glory event in New York, and Robin won, and Robin wins this one again. And that fight was pretty close. That was really going down to the wire. But in the end, Robin van Roostelman is now the new lightweight champion. And Glory Kickboxing is a great promotion, great organization. Really is picking up where K1 Kickboxing left off. I mean, K1 Kickboxing right now is kind of hanging on by a thread, which is an entirely different story in itself. But Glory Kickboxing, I really have enjoyed it. Great promotion, great fights. Next event is December 21st, Friday night. Definitely can't wait for that. And now we're going to get into our second segment here. We're going to be talking about the upcoming UFC fight tonight. on Fox Sports 1, UFC Fight Night. It is Mauricio Shogun Hua versus Saint Olive Previers. Sorry, folks, it's in French. I cannot pronounce French pretty well. But it is Saint Puix. Oliver Saint Puix. Saint Puix, I have seen fight before in the Strike Force organization. During I think this was a little before it was bought out by UFC. But he is a tremendous fighter. Good kickboxer, good striking. Definitely am looking forward to this fight. Also, Shogun, of course, is the legend, Mauricio Shogun Hua, former Pride champion, former UFC champion as well. I'm really going to go with Shogun on this one, coming off injuries and delays and stuff, and I'm really looking forward to Shogun coming back and winning this fight. And the winner of this fight could possibly take on the winner of Cormier versus Jones for the light heavyweight championship. And also, this fight is taking place in Brazil. It's taking place in Brazil. But UFC is pretty big over there in Brazil. I mean, actually, the whole sport of mixed martial arts is big in Brazil. Brazil is really has taken over the whole fighting country. It really is a fighting country. There's a lot of kickboxers, Brazilian jiu-jitsu artists coming out of there, judo, karate. It really is great. And in fact, I often said this as a joke about Brazil. In Brazil, you only have three choices for an occupation. You can either be a fighter, a soccer player, or a supermodel. Now, if I had lived in Brazil, of course I would have to be a fighter because I wouldn't look good in a bikini, unlike Giselle, and as much respect as I do have for soccer, I'm not a big soccer fan, but I do respect it. In fact, it's always big when Brazil and Mexico go out on the soccer field. And
do you think one of the things they like a lot is how, is it true that it's no holds barred? UFC is much more unhinged.
It used to be really no holds barred back in the day.
Right.
I'm talking early mid '90s. The only rules back then was no eye gouging, and no biting.
Right.
Those were the only rules. And then, because of the witch hunt by John McCain, and we had to change the rules. No low blows, no headbutting, no
fish hooking. I heard in the sitcoms.
Friends on Friends.
Yes, exactly.
No fish hooking.
So that was even in the 90s, right?
Yeah, no fish hooking. And they also said no finger. You can't put your finger in a fighter's cut. Tito Ortiz was the first fighter to do that in the UFC, and after that they had to do away with that rule. Yeah, they really had to. They had to do away with that rule. So that's what. But other than that, it really is kind of safe compared to other sports and stuff. And also a funny story about Brazil. I was at Prudential Center during the World Cup, and I was during the World Cup this year, and I was in the.
I was to say, I wish I had been in Copley Square. It sounded like it was crazy there.
Yeah, it was. They were watching the Germany-USA game and watching some other games as well. And I was in the food court, and I saw these ladies there, and they had the Brazilian soccer uniforms on. I said, "Oh, you guys are from Brazil?" And they went, "Yes, we are from Brazil." And I said, one thing I like about Brazil is that you guys have some of the best MMA fighters in the world. And she said, and they were like, "Oh, really? Do you do?" And I said, yes, you do. You have Anderson Silva, you have, the Shoguns, Shogun Huas, you have Vitor Belfort. And as the door is opening right now, that is my mom and my niece. They're coming in. I guess maybe we can, as they're coming in, we can probably get them. No, don't. Yeah, you don't have to stop it, man. We can get them to maybe say hello and stuff and what have you.
So anyway,
Yeah.
what they say about the?
Yeah, they said like I said like your sport is really starting to take over Brazil, and they said, no, yes it is, but soccer is still number one. Soccer is still number one. Yeah.
I see.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Oh, they just waved hi as they went in. But yeah, they said like, oh, but I said like, yeah, I heard that it's starting to take over Brazil. One of them said, no, UFC is very popular. It is, but soccer is still the number one sport. And yes, it is still the number one sport. Of course, because of Pele. Yeah, Pele back in the day of soccer. But UFC is really is a great organization, and mixed martial arts is a great sport. And yeah, like I said, Brazil, best fighters in the world, also the best supermodels in the world. Oh, Giselle Bundchen. Tom, let me tell you something. They think they have a daughter. And let me tell you something.
Yeah.
That daughter turns out anything like Giselle. Tom is not gonna let her out of the house.
I was about to say, it'd be very different from his wife to his daughter.
Oh yes, it is. And also, looking at the undercard for this fight tonight, we have Warley Alves taking on Alan Rama. Don't know much about these guys, so can't really comment on that. There's also Claudio nicknamed Hannibal Sylvia versus Leon Rocky Edwards. Well, with a name like Rocky, you better live up to that reputation.
I was about to say, not the only one who's taking the middle name as an homage here.
Yeah, because otherwise Sylvester Stallone will be somewhere crying. And he rarely cries. Also, we have Diego Lima versus Jorge de Oliveira. The name sounds familiar, but I don't remember seeing him. Though he does have a 7-0 record. So he's definitely moving up in the ranks. And also, the fight will begin with women fighting. Oh, Juliana Lima versus Nina and Ansarov.
So this sounds like a new development, huh?
Oh yeah. Well, I looked at the card earlier and stuff, but I was just reading it for the fans. And but yeah, the women's division, both in bantamweight and strawweight, is really coming together. In fact, the Ultimate Fighter, this season is nothing but women. It's been a really great season, a lot of great fights, and really cannot wait for that season finale. Because the women, unlike the men, if you ever watch the men fight, they're kind of like throwing each other out, throwing little jabs and stuff like that. But as soon as that bell rings, those women go at it. There's no filling out process. It's, bitch, I'm going to kill you. That's all it is. Bitch, I am going to kill you. But looks like it should be a good night of fights on Fox tonight. Fox Sports 1. I'm going to try and watch this fight at 10:30. Of course, I won't be able to yell as much because my niece is here and she's going to be going to bed early. But those are the breaks, unfortunately.
Hey, is that actually that's something they still don't do in the WWE, or is it? Do they have women featherweights and all that?
Yes, there are women wrestlers. there are female wrestlers there. Yes, they are.
Okay.
And of course I know the fans are probably listening to this being like, this guy just went to WWE. Yes, we know WWE is entertainment, but if there is something related to mixed martial arts that has something to do with pro wrestling, then we will talk about it. Bobby Lashley, Brock Lesnar, or anything else. So, but this is not a show for WWE. You know, we will not be talking much about pro wrestling unless it has something to do with mixed martial arts. So I don't want you fans being turned off right now saying like, oh, they're talking about pro wrestling. Oh, that's not real fighting. Yes, we understand. We get it. Okay, we get it. But I will say, Bobby Lashley really has been on fire, man. You know, doing MMA and pro wrestling at the same time over in Bellator. He actually just, he won a fight not too long ago. The last Bellator fight, you know, a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago, Bobby Lashley fought and he won. And, you know, Bobby really has been doing well for himself. Hopefully he will be the heavyweight champion. Of course, it would be nice if he was both heavyweight champion in both wrestling and MMA at the same time. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, lost the TNA wrestling heavyweight title, so that'll probably not happen unless they do the rematch.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that will probably happen. All right, now moving on. Oh, by the way, as I mentioned before, well, I'll say it again. UFC Fight Night on Fox Sports 1, 10:30 tonight. Check it out. Watch it. You're going to be in for a good night of fights. And, of course, my man, Mauricio Shogun Hua, coming back. And hopefully he'll win and probably get another shot at the title. Now, moving on. We're going to be talking about one of the old great fighters of combat sports. He is a boxer, and of course, one of the best fighters of the 80s, also 70s too, because his career really did take off in the 70s, early 70s. But in the 80s, he became more famous with all those fights, and was part of the greatest. And he's part of the greatest four-way rivalry in the history of boxing. Of course, I'm talking about the man known as Manos de Piedra, Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. That's right, Roberto Duran, ladies and gentlemen. You know, Roberto Duran was really one of the greatest, if not the greatest, lightweight champions of all time. I say one of because I think Julio Cesar Chavez eventually surpassed him. And Roberto Duran, of course, became famous, first in the 70s with beating Ken Buchanan. Somewhat controversial because they said they hit him low. He hit him with a low blow and stuff, and then Ken Buchanan didn't want to continue. They said it was somewhat controversial. Well, I guess it depends on your opinion if you watch the fight. But of course, later on he had the trilogy with Esteban de Jesus. They had 3 fights. One fight was a non-title fight, and Esteban won, and Duran took the last 2 fights. But Roberto Duran in the 1980s, man, he really came. Of course, by the 80s he was already a legend. But what really made him a great champion was that fight with Sugar Ray Leonard, the brawl in Montreal in 1980. I mean, I've seen that fight over 100 times now, and let me tell you something. That was one of the best fights of the rivalry there. You know, I mean, this was like Sugar Ray Leonard's second title defense. He was going. Everyone said that Ray Leonard was being protected. You know, he wasn't that good of a fighter. You know, he was. You know, of course, coming from the '76 Olympic team, you know, he was already a main eventer. But in that fight, man, Roberto Duran beat the living shit out of Sugar Ray Leonard, man. Let me tell you something. Ray Leonard's face looked like he got hit with a Mack truck. Yeah, it did. And Roberto Duran, you know, Ray Leonard fought back continuously, you know, but Duran eventually got the decision. It went 15 rounds. He won on a majority decision. And, of course, the infamous No Mas fight, the rematch happened where Roberto Duran said if he quit, you know, due to stomach cramps. But Roberto Duran, he really did redeem himself by beating Davey Moore for the junior middleweight title in Madison Square Garden, and that was a brutal fight, man. I mean, Davey Moore was like 14-0 when he was world champion, so he hadn't had much experience. And going up against an experienced fighter like Roberto Duran, man, that was he was set up for the slaughter in that fight. I mean, that fight, his face looked like raw. He looked like he'd been trying to make out with a bullet train. And in fact, it was so brutal. Both his mother and his fiance at the time, they fainted at ringside.
Oh man.
Yeah, and after that, Davey Moore was never the same. He fought for a world title 2 more times and lost, and then eventually died in a car accident. And later on, Duran, of course, fought Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Hagler beat him on a decision. He fought Thomas Hitman Hearns, and Tommy Hitman Hearns knocked Duran the fuck out. I mean, with that Hitman right hand. And then Duran continued on fighting. People thought he was washed up until he beat Iron Broccoli in 1989, became the middleweight champion of the world. In fact, that was the 1989 Fight of the Year, voted by Ring Magazine, the Bible of Boxing. And then, of course, he had the third fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. Wasn't that great of a fight. Ray won, and it wasn't the fight that everyone expected. And of course, Duran later on continued fighting. Fought Vinny Penzienza twice, lost. Fought Jose Camacho twice, lost. And then he eventually retired in January of 2002 at the age of 50. And Roberto Duran is still alive today. He's still a national hero in Panama. In fact, if you look at him today, man, he looks like a grandfather. he does. He looks like an old grandfather now. But let me tell you something, man. Roberto Duran was scary as hell. I mean, he had I remember one time he was being interviewed, and Joe Frazier was interviewed. Somebody was interviewing Joe Frazier, and about Roberto Duran, and he says, "You see that mean look like Duran? That scowl, that stare, that look. Who does he remind you of?" Thinking Joe Frazier would say it was him. He said he reminded him of me. And instead, Joe Frazier says, Charles Manson. Yeah, Duran had that Charles Manson look back then, But, and he was scary, man. He just had he had a look that could kill, man. I remember him looking at Sugar Ray Leonard in that fight, and he said, he had that look like, motherfucker, I am gonna kill you. Yeah, that's the way it was, man. But Roberto Duran, one of the best all-time fighters of the 80s, of that decade, and Manos de Piedra, hands of stone. Speaking of fighters and fights, October 30th, Devil's Night, which was also the my friend Kevin Offer's birthday. It was the 30th anniversary of Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle, 1974. And actually, it was 40 years. Actually, I think. Well, it's at one of the anniversary years. But let me tell you something, man. That was one of the best heavyweight title fights ever of the 70s. And George Foreman, of course, nowadays people know George Foreman from the Foreman Grills and beating Michael Moore in the upset when he came back out of retirement. But back then, George Foreman was a destroyer. He was considered the next Sonny Liston at one point, because he was just a knockout artist, a big guy knocking out guys. He even knocked out Joe Frazier. Took out Joe Frazier and Ken Norton, two guys who beat Muhammad Ali. And in this fight, Muhammad Ali, he was really an underdog. People thought that Muhammad Ali wasn't going to win this fight. Even though he had won the rematches with Norton and Frazier, people thought he was washed up. They thought he wasn't going to be able to stay with George. And in that fight, man, Muhammad Ali, he showed them all, man. He did this he did that thing, the rope-a-dope. You know, he just went up against the ropes and let George, you know, pound him to the body, bang, bang, bang. And of course, Ali would work off the ropes. And the thing was that George Foreman, all his fights were knockouts. You know, and back in the days, you had to go 15 rounds. You know, there was 15 rounds and stuff. And of course, George Foreman eventually punched himself out, and Muhammad Ali, you know, knocked him out. And a little while later, after that fight, you know, I think like maybe around 1977, George Foreman retired. And, you know, he became a preacher, evangelist preacher, born-again Christian. He came back in 87, fought for the title twice, once against Evander Holyfield. Holyfield's first title defense, and Holyfield won that by a decision, but George Foreman fought courageously. And then George lost to Tommy Morrison, a.k.a. Tommy Gunn from Rocky V, yeah. But then, and of course, he regained the title, beating Michael Moore in the comeback, and I was actually privileged to have seen that fight as a kid. I think that was like the first boxing match I've ever seen as a kid. Yeah, that was probably the first boxing match I've ever seen. And that was an awesome fight. And, you know, of course, Muhammad Ali is considered the greatest of all time. And he truly is. He is truly one of the greatest of all time. And that fight was just incredible. Came back, regained the title. Of course, that fight took place in Africa. Yeah, it took place over there in Zaire, Africa. It was promoted by Don King. And funny thing is, during the fight, it looked like it was going to rain. It predicted rain. And then after Ali had knocked out Foreman, and all of a sudden, started raining. So I guess...
waited till after the fact.
Yeah, I guess God was really looking after those fans and fighters that night. He really was. So really one of the best fights of all time, and you know, those guys will forever be legends, forever champions, and they're both real winners in this one here. You know, George Foreman, of course, now sells Foreman grills and does a lot of commercials and personal appearances. Muhammad Ali, of course, as we all know, has Parkinson's disease and, you know, can barely speak now, but his daughter Layla Ali carried on the tradition, boxing for a while, and yeah, and just admired by so many people. You know, also one of my heroes growing up when I was getting into boxing as well. So, you know, the greatest fighter of all time, and of course, well, I wouldn't say the greatest fight of all time, you know, because there's a lot of fights that you can make an argument about, but it is one of the greatest fights of all time. You can say that, definitely. Yeah, definitely, most definitely. Also another funny story about Michael Moore. He went to a summit for like George Foreman's grills, you know, and he looked at the videotape and he made a speech. He said, you know, just to think, if I had ducked one more time, we would be talking about we'd be talking about Michael Moore grills instead of George Foreman grills. Yeah, in fact, I actually have a George Foreman grill. If you see right there in my kitchen, we got an old George Foreman grill, and it's good for making chicken and burgers and stuff. It makes your food real fast, and it cuts out all the fat and grease too. That's healthy. Do you have a Foreman grill? You ever used a Foreman grill yourself?
I've used one, yeah. I don't have one though, but every now and then I do think it would be nice because, you know, it is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing: for all those pop stars, you know, rock bands and stuff who always go on tour and stuff, that'll come in handy when you're on tour when you can't cook anything.
Right, exactly.
I mean, granted, and plus you'll be saving money off just going to Burger King and all those other stuff. Granted, you'll have to pay a lot of money to get some frozen patties and stuff, but with a Foreman grill, you know, you can just make your You can just make your food right there.
Yeah, eventually you will get your money back because it adds up every little bit, even of fast food.
Yeah, most definitely. And the Foreman Grill, definitely one of the best from George Foreman. And there definitely is a life after boxing for people. I mean, in fact, Vander Holyfield actually has a barbecue sauce.
Oh, no way.
Oh yeah, in fact, when he was promoting it at a supermarket, Mike Tyson was actually there. Imagine that. The guy who bit his ear off, and now they're working together.
At the barbecue shop.
Yeah, that was actually on Mike Tyson's reality show he had on Fox Sports 1 called Being Mike Tyson. And I remember coming towards the commercial break, they're looking out at the window and like reflecting on old times, and Mike says, "So, how's the barbecue sauce business?"
Awesome. So you could have a George Foreman grill to cook your patties and the barbecue sauce to put on them.
Oh yeah, most definitely, man. And like I said, one of the really did work out best for both these guys, and it's still a good fight. I've seen it. Actually, I haven't seen it in a while, but whenever I do see it, man, it's a great fight to look at. And plus, it was back when George Foreman had hair. He did have hair, people. For those of you who don't know, George Foreman did have some hair. This was before he was bald. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna get into my rant of the day.
Rant of the day.
Mm-hmm. By the way, got any more margarita left?
Yeah, but I think we'll open a new can or something. Why not?
Yeah, okay. Let's get
Rant of the day.
Yep, rant of the day. And the rant of the day, people, I'm actually going to talk about violence in society today. Now,
cheers, by the way.
Yep, cheers. Drinking Mike's
Hard Cranberry.
Yeah, Mike's Hard Cranberry Lemonade. I was actually drinking, when I first started getting into drinking, I started off drinking a lot of Mike's Hard Lemonade. Of course, eventually I graduated to other flavors. I still drink Mike's. In fact, whenever my good friend Kramer comes over, I'll get some Mike's Hard Lemonade for her, and we'll crack open a can or bottle, and cheers, and drink and talk away. So, to my rant.
Yes.
A lot of people say, especially towards mixed martial arts, it's violent. It shouldn't be on television. We should keep our kids from watching this. Blah 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 blah. And here's how I look at violence in sports. Okay. Well, violence. Period. I break up violence into 3 different categories. There is movie violence, there is sports violence, and then there is real violence. And here's how it is. Movie violence. Movie violence, as we all know, is smoke and mirrors. Basically, it's a lot of blood squibs, there's a lot of makeup, special effects.
Same with TV, I guess, right?
Yeah, TV too. Yep. Also with TV. I guess so we can just call it Hollywood violence then.
Right.
We'll call it Hollywood violence.
Hollywood violence, yeah.
Also, there is a lot of, there is some CGI involved. A lot of green screens. That sort of thing. The Schwarzenegger movies, the Bruce Lee movies that I grew up watching, and all that stuff. That's all, that we all know that it's pretend. That's pretend violence. The good guys and bad guys, they walk away both alive in the end. In fact, I think that should happen with kids. Kids should go to a movie set on a field trip. Go to a movie studio and go there and learn how it's done.
Right.
So that way they're more educated and they know that what they're watching is just a movie and that it's not real and they won't
made to look that way and
Yes. And then you have sports violence. Now, this doesn't just involve combat sports. This also involves hockey, rugby, and football. Okay? I look at sports violence like a fire. like a campfire, a bonfire. It's like, yes, there's fire on it, but it's a controlled fire.
Right.
And that's what this these sports are. It's controlled. Yes, there is a lot of violence. People do get hurt, but it is controlled, people. It is controlled. And what many people don't understand is it's not a matter of shoving it down the people's throats. It's a matter of giving them what they want. Supply and demand. And also, the State Athletic Commission, which is the government, is sanctioning these fights. Okay? It's the government. And so it's not like, WWE where they can come in and do a show whenever they want. They, the sports, they have to be sanctioned by the state athletic commissions. And because it's sanctioned by the state athletic commissions, it makes it legal for them to put on shows. I think New York is the only one that isn't sanctioning it. Damn it. And then there's real violence. Now, the real violence, of course, is the kind of stuff, you might see in the hood or anywhere USA or when you watch the news, okay? The woman being sexually assaulted, the school shootings, or, a kid, getting shot on a street corner. That is the violence I don't find entertaining.
Right.
I don't. I think it is sort of sad. I mean, I do watch Nancy Grace and Jane Velez Mitchell and Dr. Drew on HLN, because they do have interesting stories and stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm also heartbroken and a little shaken up by it because, it's what happens in the real world, and it shows that, once again, it's not a nice world out there.
And it's the same reason we're, we were afraid of Al Qaeda. The same reason we are afraid of ISIS now. It's like, it gets even worse in those areas and stuff like that.
Yeah, and and that's the other thing too, because it's like right now we're at war with ISIS. In fact, are we still at war with Iraq?
Technically, yeah. So we went back into Iraq because of ISIS, but mainly we're, I think, focusing on the Syria part of it. But yeah, like the only reason we're back at war in Iraq is because of ISIS. It's not because of we tried to end the war in Iraq in 2010 and 2011.
Okay, and that's this is the thing. We are at war with ISIS right now. Okay, well, that's when we were at war, and I said this when we were at war with Afghanistan. My thing is this. We have soldiers, that are getting their heads blown off, they're getting their arms chopped off, they're being water tortured, and stuff. So, I put things in perspective, okay? That violence, that is something we should be more concerned about than two men fighting in a ringer cage, or when Arnold Schwarzenegger decides to pop a cap in somebody's ass. Okay? Those other violence, that should not be a concern for parents or for anybody. Out there in the real world and what's going on in the war, should be a concern.
Right.
And I also say this because I have a friend that did some time over in Iraq. Of course, he was an analyst, but he also did some time out in the field. I also have a friend of the family. He's actually a friend of my brother's, Ricky. And, he went over to Iraq. He served some time in the service. So he's been out there in the battlefield. Okay? So it amazes me that people can look at two men in combat, agreed combat, beating the crap out of each other, and be so shocked when there's a war going out there. And also on ISIS, they chopped off one of the journalists' heads off.
Right.
They've been killing journalists over there,
decapitating
them and stuff like that. And also, you have little you have kids on the enemy side. Little child soldiers out there. They're also being killed, even though they're the enemy. I don't like seeing kids being killed. And on top of that, any ghetto in the USA, you've got Bloods and Crips and Essays and Latin Kings killing each other. That is the violence that we should be concerned about, not what's going on the TV. And I say this to every parent. Well, hopefully there's a parent that is listening to this and is listening to the sound of my voice when I say this. Stop looking for the TV to raise your damn kids. Okay? These guys are athletes. That's what they get paid to do. They get paid to knock people out. They get paid to win fights.
Right.
They do not get paid. Yes, they have to kiss hands and shake babies, and they have to inspire them for something greater. But at the end of the day, they cannot raise your kids. Some of them have kids of their own, and that's hard enough to raise their kids. They can't raise anybody else's kids, and also they can't go home with them. They cannot go home with these kids. Now, if these kids want to grow up and be fighters, that is great. And also for the parents, if they do like it and you're a little concerned about it, sit down, have a dialogue. Have a dialogue with them. Find out why they like this, why they want to do it. And also, my thing is this. I used to do volunteer work at an MMA gym, and I had, I've seen little kids in there, and I've seen teenagers go in there practicing this. In fact, the owners, who are a husband and wife couple, they let their little girl train in it as well, do a little light training in it itself. So, I mean, and plus, it wasn't bad when we took karate or kung fu or judo? No!
No.
It's the same thing. Mixed martial arts is about the same as any other martial art. You learn discipline, you learn how to defend yourself.
I was about to say, it is about protection, and that's why you enrolled your kids in karate. That's how it was,
Yeah, in fact, my niece who came in, she took Taekwondo for a while. And of course, and I even tried to get my brother and his wife to get her into MMA. I said, why don't you try it with MMA training, advance her martial arts training. And of course, the wife was like, no, I'm a little too concerned. It's so violent. And of course, my niece has her own opinions on MMA. And of course, I'm not gonna like really kind of diss her. I mean, she's a kid. She doesn't know much. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is this.
Yeah.
Put things in perspective. And also, as the old saying goes, remember how our parents always used to tell us, pick your battles?
Right.
Exactly. You have to pick your battles, people. And not only do you have to pick your battles, but you have to pick your battles wisely. What is more important? Violence going out there in the real world, or is it violence in sports? And let me tell you something. The real world violence, that is more dangerous because in the real world, people don't get up and walk away. They're in the morgue.
Yep.
They're either in the morgue or they're in a wheelchair.
And it wasn't agreed to or expected. That's the other thing. Like you said, these guys trained for this. They go into the ring knowing what they're getting into.
Yes, exactly. And all the other stuff, like the underground street fighting, all those pit fighting, underground stuff, like something you would see in like Bloodsport or the Lionheart or any other movie where they have underground street fighting. That has nothing to do with the sport of mixed martial arts. It is a street fight. I do find it entertaining, but at the end of the day, it's not a sport. It is illegal. I don't advise anybody to do this as well. That has nothing to do with the sport. Neither the backyard wrestling or backyard street fight club, whatever it is, or that women doing foxy boxing or jello mold wrestling in some redneck bar and that's some country bumpkin place right there. That has nothing to do with our sport. That has nothing to do with the sport. And plus, at the end of the day, people are always doing weird shit in their backyards, people. So let's please cut the crap.
Okay.
Yeah, cut the crap.
And it's also maybe some of this stuff helps to lessen the real world violence too, right?
Well, yes, exactly.
If you can get a little bit of your aggression out, I think that's a lot better than you said a fire. I agree with that, or an earthquake. Studies have found a little tiny earthquakes are much better than to wait for the huge rumble.
Yeah, exactly. And also, people. And also, I mean, some of these, and plus these fighters, actually the mixed martial artists, they have more than mixed martial artists. They're educated. They have college degrees because some of them are wrestlers. Freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestlers, and they go on to college, and some of them have degrees. In fact, I actually find that the background of most of these MMA fighters are much better than the ones in boxing because. In boxing, it's always I grew up in the mean streets of anywhere USA. I went into a gym and I started boxing, and boxing saved my life. It's almost the same, and most of these boxers haven't even finished high school. Never. Some of them don't have a high school degree, I think, and stuff, except for the Klitschko brothers. The Klitschko brothers are very educated. They have doctor's degrees, and especially Vladimir. Vladimir's the one who's, by the way, is married to, getting married to Hayden Panettiere, and is having a baby with her. Yes. Yeah.
No comment about that, but yes.
Oh, yeah, I like Hayden Panettiere. I was a fan of hers in Heroes, and
right.
I'm not really a fan of Nashville, but I kind of respect the show and stuff. I think she's a great actress.
Yeah.
But the thing is, folks, as I said before, pick your battles when it comes to violence. Okay? Don't let the TV raise your kid. In the words of Charles Barkley, I am not a role model. I do not get paid to be a role model. Same thing with these fighters. They do not get paid to be role models. They are paid to fight and to beat each other up. That is all they do. Yes, they do inspire them for better lives, but at the end of the day, they cannot raise your kids. Raise your kids. You are the parent. And also, because I know there's a lot of strict parents out there, I mean, what you do in your household, what you do in your how you decide what your kids should watch, that should be you. But at the same time, get information on what they're watching. And I said, and this is a little saying I say that. Well, this is a saying that I'm saying out loud for the first time is when you're gonna argue about something, about a subject, be the smartest person in the room about it. Like if because there's a lot of times. When I've talked to people about mixed martial arts, they have no idea about it. They're clueless. They don't know anything about it.
Right.
Or if they do know it, and they don't care. But the way to win an argument on the subject is to be the smartest person in the room about it. Okay, that's how you win the argument.
Yeah.
Instead of people just saying, "Well, it's just violence and stuff," it's like, no, go to a gym. Go to a gym, sit in on an MMA class, and see how it's done. And also go on the internet, look it up, how they, the history of it and what have you.
Right.
Okay, and that's not just with mixed martial arts, but with anything.
Really.
Yeah.
Like I also did speech and debate class back in the day, and it's a completely different thing, of course, but at the same time, it's like the same idea. You want to. You don't win by hyperbole and like real world tactics. You win by knowing about your shit.
Yeah, exactly. Or like with rap music, when they debate well, this rapper, all the rappers, all they do is, it's like, well, you have to know what they're really. You have to know their background, and B, you have to have a real information on the background of these rappers. So that way when you talk to your kid about, oh, I don't want you listening to that, and because kids we also don't give them enough credit for being as smart as they are.
Right.
We really don't give them that much credit. Instead of being dictatorship, say, no, you're not listening to this, period, end story. Be smart about the subject. Do your background information, folks.
Right.
Like I've always, I said it before, if you're gonna debate about something, be the smartest person in the room about the subject. Always be the smartest person in the room, because 9 out of 10 times, the smartest person in the room wins. Not the dictator, not the smartass or anything. It's the person who is the smart one. The smart one always wins.
Who knows the knowledge, yes.
Yes, exactly. And right now, before we end this podcast, of course, it's going to be on YouTube and stuff. Eventually, we might get this on iTunes.
Yeah, that is our goal.
Yeah, exactly. And, just like Adam Carolla, and Joe Rogan and all the other podcast guys. In fact, I want to send a shout out to them because they really were an influence. Shout out to Carolla Digital. Adam Carolla doing his thing with the Adam Carolla Show and Adam and Dr. Drew Show, and of course, for crying out loud, with Stephanie Weller Taylor from Parental Guidance on Nickelodeon, and Adam's wife Lynette. They do the show together. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my friends really loves Kevin Smith. I'm going to give a shout out to Kevin Smith and his Hollywood podcast. That's awesome too.
Yeah, and also big shout out to the Joe Rogan Show. Joe Rogan Experience. The whole Death Squad: Joe Rogan, Brian Callen, Duncan Trussell, Brian Redband, and of course Eddie Bravo, who's also a jiu-jitsu instructor and in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu out in Los Angeles. And of course, the man with the mad flavor, Joey Coco Diaz, Joey Poppy as I call him. Joey Diaz, man, he is funny, man. That thick New York accent, Cubano boy, you know what I'm saying? So shout out to those guys. You guys really have inspired us, and especially me, to do this. And we hope later in the future we can probably be as big as you guys, so we could be mentioned in the names of other great podcasts, and also Gabe here can quit his day job.
Amen to that, brother.
Yes. And that's going to do it here from Beantown, Massachusetts.
Beantown to your town.
That's right, Beantown to your town. This is Matthew Burris along with Gabriel here, and peace out.
Peace out.